Every farmer in the country, especially arable and grass growers, know about the grass grub. It's one of the few pests in this country that are native to New Zealand. The other one is the piranha moth. All the other things we see on our crops have come in on boats and aeroplanes and the wind. But the grass grub, for years, hundreds of years actually, has damaged grass through its larvae, its maggots, its underground larvae, by eating the roots. A few years ago, dramatic changes occurred, and vineyards in Marlborough started seeing some damage on the vines in November, which they'd never seen before. And it transpired that it was nocturnal damage caused by the adults of the grass grub, which were emerging from the soil in November, which is spring, and invading vineyards in very, very large numbers. And people were just blown away by this because they'd never seen it before. So lots of science is needed to ask all the questions. Where do they come from? How much damage do they do? Do they eat the flower buds? Yes, they do. And can we do something about it? Doing something about it is easy, actually, in the short term. We spray karate and other broad-spectrum pesticides. We could do that, and that would kill them. But they're tough little devils, and not much does kill them, actually, as adults, because they're covered in wax. So wouldn't it be nice if we don't need to use those broad-spectrum pesticides and use a bit of, you might call it biological agriculture or green agriculture, and attack these bugs, or beetles they are actually, in another way, which is what we're trying to do with a PhD student funded by the government in collaboration with Kono Beverages, who are part of the Wakatu Corporation. And they're extremely helpful to us in doing this work. And he's looking at other ways, he's thinking really deeply. What can we do apart from spraying that can reduce the damage of these damn things?
And when do you think you'll have an answer?
We've got an answer already, a partial answer, and that is if we use non-toxic sprays, and we're using kaolin, a form of clay, and what's called diatomaceous earths, which are made of the diatoms that used to be in the sea, little bits of silica, it looks like we're reducing damage by half by spraying these innocuous, inert compounds onto the vines in November before the beetles come in.
Now, wetters is another problem in vineyards at the moment.
It is amazing, actually, that just around the same time that grass grubs started hitting vines, this endemic special group of insects called wetter, which have a Tawa status for Maori in many cases, and they're rare, started invading vines. Actually, they didn't invade them, they were living there all the time. And another PhD student called Jerry, also funded by the government, is working with Constellation Wines, the biggest wine company in the world, and he's shown that they mainly come up in the spring from under the vines. So they don't fly in, well, they can't fly anyway, they don't walk in, they're there all the time. And the biggest numbers are in the soil below the vines where they make their burrows. And then they come out of the burrows at night, like the grass grub does work at night, and they climb the vines, and they chew the leaves a little bit, but most importantly they choose the flower buds. And any viticulturist knows if you lose your flower buds, that's it. So again, we have the challenge of we could use broad-spectrum pesticides, but A, people don't like it, B, they don't work very well, and secondly, because Kono Beverage is a Maori-owned company, they believe, of course, in concepts like kaitiakitanga, and they believe in real stewardship of the land and of the crops. So it would not be a satisfactory solution to spray these vines with pesticide all the time. So Jerry is faced with the same challenge. How can we do it differently? And I'll see you next year. No, that's not true. He again is looking at inert sprays which can deter the wetter possibly without killing it, which is nice, and cut down damage. Also, because Kono Beverages is part of Wakatu, and Wakatu have a seafood component, a massive waste product from Wakatu, of course, is mussel shells, because they grow mussels in the Marlborough Sound. So instead of dumping those in landfill or something, Kono had the idea is, why don't we spread those under the vines where the wetter live and see what happens? So they did that with Jerry's help, and that has had a major impact on the damage at the top of those vines. Maybe the wetter have difficulty getting through the mussel shells, or they come out and go somewhere else. But whatever the mechanisms, it's a very clever idea. And Mauricio, the grass grub man, has also been using mussel shells for the grass grub. And again, although they come in sideways and smack into the vines on a November night, something's happening such that when we have mussel shells under the vines, the beetles do less damage. But we can't understand that. It must mean that after they hit the vine, they go down to lay eggs, and there's all these mussel shells in the way, so they say, oh, I'm not interested in that, and they go somewhere else. But whatever the mechanism, mussel shells and inert sprays seem to be making a difference in both of those vineyards.